The most important AI story might not be the chatbot. It might be the substation outside a town you have never heard of. Because the cloud is starting to look a lot less weightless when the bill shows up on land. The announcement usually sounds clean: billions of dollars, a high-tech campus, jobs, innovation, ribbon cutting. But that is the brochure version. The real story starts when someone asks a boring question: who has to build the power lines? That question changes the room. Because now the project is not just a technology story. It is a utility story, a land use story, and sometimes a public money story. A modern AI data center is not just a warehouse with servers. It is a factory that turns electricity, water strategy, land, fiber, and tax deals into computation. The product is invisible. The inputs are not. The grid was not built for surprise megaloads landing next to small towns every few months. Utilities can add capacity, but not instantly. Transformers, substations, transmission lines, permits, and crews all move slower than a press release. And when the equipment is scarce, the delay is not theoretical. A single missing transformer can turn a shiny announcement into a years-long waiting game. So if you want to understand a data center deal, ignore the glossy rendering for a minute. Follow the transformer. If the local system needs upgrades, the key question is whether the company pays directly or whether part of the cost spreads into the wider utility plan. That is the hidden bill. It may not say AI on your statement. It may show up as a rate case, a transmission project, a capacity charge, or a long-term utility investment that everyone is told was necessary. Sometimes that investment really is necessary. The question is whether the public can see the cause, the benefit, and the payer before the invoice gets blended into the background. Water is the second argument, and it is easy to get wrong. Some facilities use very little water on site, some use more during hot weather, some lean on closed-loop systems. The honest question is local: what water, from where, under what conditions? That is why the best question is not, do data centers use water? It is, what does this specific project use on the hottest week of the year? Servers make heat. That heat has to go somewhere. You can move it with air, chillers, cooling towers, or other systems, but there is no magic version where physics takes the day off because the logo says AI. The strangest part is that the truth usually hides in boring documents. Interconnection filings, planning board packets, water permits, tax incentive agreements. Those papers are not exciting, but they are where the trade-offs stop sounding like marketing. If a promise matters, it should survive being written down. If it disappears when the document arrives, that tells you something too. To be clear, a data center can be a good deal. A town can get tax revenue, infrastructure investment, fiber upgrades, and a large customer that helps justify new grid equipment. The point is not that every project is bad. The problem is fuzzy promises. Jobs can mean a huge construction phase and a much smaller permanent staff. Investment can mean private buildings on private land. Grid upgrades can mean different things depending on who owns the invoice. Fuzzy language is useful because everyone can hear what they want. Residents hear stability. Officials hear growth. Companies hear flexibility. That is why the jobs conversation gets tense. A data center can consume power like a heavy industrial customer, but operate with far fewer permanent workers than a factory of similar local impact. The math may still work, but residents deserve the math. This is where the town hall turns from polite to sharp. One side says the project is the future. The other side asks about wells, noise, bills, roads, emergency response, and whether anyone signed away leverage before the public understood the deal. Those questions are not anti-progress. They are the ordinary questions people ask when a major industrial neighbor moves in. AI companies want speed. They need campuses, chips, and electricity before the next model cycle. Local government moves through hearings, zoning, utility reviews, and public comment. That mismatch creates pressure, and pressure is where weak deals happen. When one side is racing a global technology market and the other side is reading a zoning packet after work, the process has to slow down enough for real answers. This is not an anti-technology argument. It is a transparency argument. If AI is going to become basic infrastructure, then the infrastructure around it should be visible too. The wires, the water plan, the tax terms, and the backup power. The dark side is not that servers exist. The dark side is when a project is sold as weightless innovation, while the physical consequences are treated like someone else's homework. That is how a local issue becomes invisible, not because it is small, but because it is split across departments, contracts, and utility filings. So here is the first question a town should ask. How much peak power will this site need, and what has to be built to serve it? Not average power, not a polite estimate. Peak demand, upgrade list, payer, and timeline. If the answer is confidential, ask for the public version. If the public version is vague, ask who is being protected by the vagueness. Second, what cooling system is being used, what water source is involved, and what happens during drought or heat waves. A good answer is specific. A weak answer sounds like a paragraph that could be copied into any project in any county. Specific answers name systems, thresholds, sources, and limits. Generic answers use words like sustainable without showing the plumbing. Third, what tax breaks are being offered, and what does the community get in return? A discount can be worth it if the public gets enforceable benefits. It is much harder to defend if the benefits are vague. The word enforceable matters. A nice promise at a podium is not the same thing as a term that still exists 5 budget cycles later. Fourth, who checks the promises later? A deal that looks impressive on announcement day can age badly if nobody tracks power usage, water withdrawals, local hiring, noise, or the actual public cost. Accountability is not a vibe. It is a calendar, a report, a responsible office, and consequences when the numbers do not match the pitch. There is also the unglamorous stuff. Backup generators, fuel storage, truck traffic during construction, fans, security lights, emergency planning. None of those details make the keynote, but they can make the neighborhood meeting. The smaller details are often where residents first feel the project. Not in an earnings call, but in a road closure, a low hum, or a late-night light over a fence. This is happening now because demand forecasts changed fast. The U.S. Department of Energy says data center electricity use could roughly double or triple from 2023 to 2028. The International Energy Agency says global data center electricity demand could more than double by 2030. Those are not tiny shifts. They are the kind of shifts that make utilities rewrite plans, regulators ask harder questions, and towns realize the cloud has a very real address. When everyone wants power at once, the queue becomes a warning sign. A project can be announced years before the grid is ready. That gap invites shortcuts, expensive upgrades, and political fights over who gets served first. The queue is where hype meets hardware. If the wires are not ready, the marketing schedule does not matter. A strong deal is boring in the best way. It says who pays for grid upgrades. It names the water source. It caps or reports usage. It explains backup power. It puts community benefits in writing. It survives questions. That kind of boring is valuable. It means the town is not relying on memory, optimism, or a handshake after the cameras leave. A weak deal leans on excitement. It shows a beautiful campus and says the future is coming. Then, when residents ask direct questions, the answers get vague, confidential, or postponed until after the vote. That is the moment to slow down. Not to kill the project necessarily, but to make sure the public is not approving a headline instead of a deal. The twist is that the cloud is not a place. It is a set of places. It is land, concrete, transformers, cooling systems, permits, utility bills, and people who live near all of it. Every prompt, every model, every answer from a chatbot passes through a physical chain somewhere. The chain is easier to ignore when it is far away. So the real choice is not AI or no AI. The real choice is whether communities negotiate like the infrastructure is real, or accept a futuristic story that leaves the practical costs blurry. The next time you hear new data center, replace it with major industrial load. That one phrase makes the conversation clearer. It does not make the project bad. It makes the trade-offs visible. It also changes the standard of proof. A major industrial load should not be approved on vibes. It should be approved on terms. AI may change the world, but before it does, it has to plug in somewhere. And if a company wants a town to host the future, the town should be allowed to read the bill first. If you enjoyed this video and want more oddly useful dude facts, hit like and subscribe. The weirdest details are usually hiding in the boring paperwork.